Hang on, I gotta mute everybody first, then I'll record.
Yep.
Oops, is it recording already?
It is. It's okay. Go for it. Makes it fun.
Well, it was already recording. Welcome to our book club tonight. We are going over chapters 15 and 16 in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And I'm Rochelle Osborne, and this is Matt Osborne.
Hi.
And Matt's going to start us out tonight.
Wow, no pressure. It's all right. I'm prepared. So, the two chapters tonight are absolutely phenomenal chapters. Not that the other ones in the book aren't great, but these two are really, really powerful chapters. They're also the hardest chapters for a lot of people to cover because they require a lot of introspective, really looking at yourself and how you lead your teams. And it puts the onus on the leader, which is important. The first chapter we talked about tonight is the law of victory. And I love this one because it says leaders find a way for the team to win, period. So, as the leader of your teams, it's your job. And that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. But it's your job to set the conditions for your team to win. And when you think of the word win, that's insert any goal that you have for your team there. Insert any personal goal they have for themselves, whether it's to make the next promotion or to add so many people to their team, whatever that may be. It's your job as the leader to set the conditions for them to win. I always like to start off with personal stories. I think they kind of help, bring the key point homes here. So when I was stationed in Korea, we had this thing that we do every year. It's called the Expert Field Medical Badge Testing. And it's kind of the who's who of the medical community. It's a competition that goes on for a week, the actual testing of it. And it's designed to identify the highest caliber of medics in terms of their skill sets and different things. And when I was there, I was in charge of a group of about 14 to 15 soldiers. And, we set a really high goal. We sat down and we said, this is what we want to do as a team. We want to take 11 people to this competition, and we want to bring back, at least 50% or more. And everybody said it couldn't be done. Couldn't be done. Couldn't be done. We said it can be done, and this is how we're going to do it. So we cast a vision, and we started to prepare. As soon as we really started getting into the preparation for this, we ran into a lot of the hardships and the obstacles that we had planned for already, but we knew we were going to run into them. We had a lot of competing tasks. See if this sounds familiar. We had a lot of competing tasks. We had a lot of naysayers that said, that tried to ask why we were spending so much time training when they should be able to use those soldiers to do other things that needed to be done. There was a lot of doubt from the leadership above us that it could be done and that we were utilizing our time in the best way possible. Through it all, my job as a leader was to maintain their focus, to keep them focused on the victory at hand, which was what we had established as the goal. So I continue to reemphasize that unity of vision for them. This is our vision. This was our goal. This is what we said we were going to do. So let's prove them all wrong, and we gave them something to rally around. The other thing that we did that was really unique is for training purposes, instead of me running myself into the ground as the leader and realizing that my skill sets may not just be the only skill sets required, we leveraged all the complementary skill sets amongst the team to get the folks trained up and ready to go. And then my biggest thing was, like I said before, I protected them from distractors. I was determined to see them win at this goal, and they knew that. They knew there was no doubt in their minds at the end of the day that I was behind them 100%, that I believed this could be done, that I was going to be right there beside them on the day they earn these badges and celebrate with them. So here was the result of all that. When you cast a vision, you identify the obstacles early, you set the conditions for them to be victorious in their goal. Here's the result of that. 9 out of 11 of those soldiers earned their badges. That was the highest ever awarded on the Korean Peninsula in the history of that badge being awarded out there for one organization. And that's, that wasn't a testament to just their skill sets. At the end of the day, when General Granger, the general that was awarding the badges, he kept asking why I kept coming up there to pin badges on soldiers. And then he realized they were all my soldiers. And the beautiful thing about that was this law of victory in action. We did not say no, it couldn't be done. We didn't let obstacles waylay us. We knew what victory looked like, and we proceeded to go forward and make that happen and bring it into fruition.
And failure was not an option.
Failure was not an option. we were short of burning bridges. We were making sure that this was going to happen. So there's a couple of great points I like in this chapter. John Maxwell shares a lot of great stories. He's he's considered the king of storytelling. He's got a story for everything. And, but I like it because he brings three key concepts or three key components of victory to the forefront. And I kind of talked about these in the story that I shared with you. And it's important because if you really want to help your teams achieve victory, you have to be able to do these three things. The first thing you have to do is you have to be able to create a unity of vision. And what does that mean? That means taking time to actually, write out a vision statement for your team or a goal statement for your team, or work with them to develop individual goal statements for their teams. And then create a unity of vision around that. That it gives them something to remind themselves when they run into an obstacle. It reminds them, what is my goal again? Is this obstacle pertinent to that goal? Or is this just something trying to waylay me? Do I have to deal with this obstacle? Is it critical to me to have to deal with it in order to keep moving forward towards that goal, that victory, if you will? The next thing that we talk about is a diversity of skill sets. We've talked about this time and time again. It's very easy to want to attract people who are just like you to your team. Because we tend to say we connect better with those people. But the reality is, John gives the example in the book, you don't see a football team full of quarterbacks. It takes a team of running backs and tight ends and wide receivers and the quarterback and the coach and, just all the different folks playing as kind of a concerted orchestra for the team to be victorious at the end of the day. And in much the same way with your own teams, you have to be able to identify the diversity of skill sets that exist on your team, and then leverage those in the right ways to allow your teams to be successful. And that gets back to the personality books. That gets back to understanding strengths and weaknesses, all these tools that we've talked about, and we'll continue to talk about because they're very important. Yeah. And then, the final point that John talks about is that the leader must be dedicated to the victory, and at the same time raising the potential of those around them. Your teams, and think about it. Have you ever been on a team where you knew the leader's heart wasn't in it? How does that make you feel when you know that there's, they tell you with their words that, yeah, we can do this, but their actions are saying everything other than that. It's kind of, I equate that to the person that goes and says, hey, this is my horse. I'm entering my horse in this race. And then they bet on the other horse. It doesn't, your actions don't back up what your words are saying. So your team will pick that apart very quickly. So you have to make sure that your actions are consistent with your words, and all that aligns in such a way that it says, I'm dedicated to seeing you victorious and us as a team victorious in our goals. You have anything to add to that right now?
I don't know. That was really good.
I'm not done yet.
Oh, okay. Why are you asking me if I finish your stuff?
So, I love this statement. And, this was by accident. I actually posted this statement because, John will use a lot of these same quotes across his material because they're just very powerful quotes. But I actually posted this week by complete accident, having no idea that it was going to show up in this chapter this week. And he says, when the pressure is on, great leaders are at their best. Whatever is on the inside comes to the surface. And think about that, when it's crunch time at the end of the month and it's time to help people get promoted and meet goals that they've established, what in you comes out as a leader? Is that the time where you say, I really don't feel like doing this? My heart's not in this. I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. Or do you say, you know what? I've got to maintain that vision for them. I've got to set and model what victory looks like for them, and they need to know that I'm truly supportive of what they're trying to achieve as my team members, because we rise or fall as a team, period. There's no individuals in this business. There's very few sports are there individuals that are successful. So keep that in mind. The last thing he talks about is he says leaders, these are some things that you need to understand about leaders. Leaders make things better for the team. So if you want to model victory for your team, constantly looking for ways to make the situation better for them. And what does that mean? That doesn't mean you have to handhold them every step of the way and answer their questions and basically tell them how to do everything, because that actually is robbing them, as we talked about before, of personal growth in their own part. But what it means is having tools in place that help them, having good practices of duplication, being available to them, so that when they have those questions, and maybe it's very deliberate, hey, these are the times I'm available to my team, but being available to your teams so that they know that you're truly in this to make it better for them. The next point he talks about is do everything possible to achieve victory. There's a story, and I believe it was back in ancient China, where they talked about when generals would go to war with other communities or countries, as they would take their troops across bridges, they would literally burn the bridges behind them. And that's where that whole saying comes from. And the premise was this, is that there is no plan B. There is no alternative. The only way that we're going home is to keep moving forward and be victorious at the end. If I left the bridge there, I left an alternative for you to deter from victory, which is the only thing that at the time that was the only thing was victory. So in much the same way for your teams, you want to make sure that you're establishing, burn those bridges, if you will, that are going to hinder them from moving forward and growing and being victorious. And what I mean by that is, put to rest the whole concept of I don't have time for this. Well, what do you have time for? How much time can you give to this each day? Okay, so maybe 2 hours a day is too much for you. Well, what about an hour? Is an hour too much? Okay, well, what can you do in that hour? And really you ask them those hard questions, and what you're doing is you're burning those mental bridges for them in doing so. Mm-hmm. The next point he makes is, leaders are visual figures of inspiration. I love this. Plexus is very good about this. The leaders in Plexus are very good about this. When you think of Tarl and you think of Alec, you think of, they are visual representations of inspiration. And when you have powerful, visual examples at the helm, it just is natural to know that that's going to transpire all the way down through the ranks of the company, if you will. So, you need to be the visual figure of inspiration for your team, which means what? It means you can't have a negative mindset. There's no room for negative mindsets in this business, or in any business for that matter. But, we're speaking about this one. So if you find yourself in a negative mindset, you're going to have to get yourself out of that negative mindset before you talk to anybody on your team. Because the minute you start talking, again, there's going to be a disconnect between what you're saying and what your actions are saying, and they're going to pick up on that, and you're no longer being an inspiration to them. Okay, it's actually going to have the negative effect on them. The next point he says is leaders offer hope, a sense of direction, and confidence. And think about that. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go find a losing team to join today. It doesn't happen. I hope not anyway. We want to all be part of a winning team. It's a natural tendency in human beings to gravitate towards the winning teams. I do that every year during football. I don't follow any football teams, but as soon as I start hearing about certain teams, I'll gravitate towards them just because it's exciting to hear about the things they're doing, especially the come from behind teams. It's a natural tendency to want to root for the winning team. So, we want to make sure that those teams, what do they do for the winning teams? Offer us a sense of direction, confidence, hope. They're inspirational to us. That's what you're trying to personify for your teams as you're driving them towards victory. And then the final point before I close my mouth is, leaders are dealers in hope. And this is important. Hope dealers. You all are already doing this. And we talk about this from a lot of standpoints. And as a health and wellness company, we're dealers in hope. But how are you dealers in hope to your individual teammates? When they're facing an obstacle, how are you a dealer in hope? When they're doubting their ability to do this job because they've got their, one or two people that are they're the naysayers and they're driving them down. How are you bringing them back up and being a dealer in hope? That is where you have to really ask yourself the hard question. I mean, it's one thing to say you're about it. It's another thing to do it. So with that, I'm going to let Rochelle talk, and then I'll give you one thing to action on or consider. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I really like how he said on page 183, and I starred this, he said, leadership is responsible, losing is unacceptable, passion is unquenchable, creativity is essential, quitting is unthinkable, commitment is unquestionable, and then victory is then inevitable. Mm-hmm. And with that kind of a mindset, I mean, you just have to pour this into yourself. You have to feed your mind those good things all the time. You have a no quit attitude. You keep going when things are rough, when a hurricane's coming through, whatever. You just keep doing what you're doing. And so, yeah, I mean, all that Matt said was really good. We can also elaborate, in question time, but did you want to finish this one thing and then go to Big Mo?
So I don't know if you have a piece of paper with you or not. If you don't, just, do this later on when you have some time. And then also remember, everything we talk about here are great things to take back to your teams as well, it's really easy when we talk about whether or not you're practicing the law of victory. So if you ask yourself that question right now, am I practicing the law of victory? Every day when I put on my game face and I'm talking to my team, am I actually practicing the law of victory for them? Am I modeling that for them? And if the answer is no, then my question to you is, what's holding you back? Very specifically, what's holding you back? And list those out on a piece of paper. And then what I want you to do is get the biggest red marker you can find, and I want you to draw a big X through all that. Okay? Because that's not doing anything for you. All that is that's those mental bridges that you need to burn for yourself. Okay? So the next thing I want you to do then is I want you to get a fresh sheet of paper and I want you to rewrite the goal for your team. What's the overarching goals for your team? What's the overarching vision for your team? Okay? And then underneath that, I want you to list the affirmations for that victory. What are the things that you're going to do? What are the things that you're affirming to do to support your team in reaching that goal? Okay. And it can be, usually we call this your vision statement, but it can be a big overarching goal for your team as well. And then what I want you to do is I want you to use that every day, whenever it comes time to put that game face on and talk to your team and motivate your team and be the honest broker with your team. I want you to put that piece of paper out and read through it again before you interact with your team that day. Reaffirm in your own mind and burn those mental bridges every day so that when you talk to your team, all they hear is victory. And with that
was very nice. That was really good. Okay, so let's move on to the law of Big Mo. Unless anybody else has anything they want to say before we go on. I liked the law of victory, but I really like the law of the Big Mo. Momentum is really important in this business. And, since I started, I remember Fallon and Kristen Abart and these people talking about rolling the snowball up the hill. And then finally you'll get to that point to where the snowball will start rolling down the hill on its own. But you have to get your momentum going. Just like anything you're doing, if you start riding a bike and you're going up a hill, it's hard, you're pushing and then you go down the hill. Oh, this is much easier, and momentum is a leader's best friend. So I really, really love this chapter. I think I underlined tons of it in here, but I really found it interesting. The law of victory I found interesting too with the story. I like all the stories. I like the story of Winston Churchill. Got myself a history lesson in there with the Nazis and whatnot. And then how Winston Churchill had aligned himself with Franklin Roosevelt and how had they not done this, had Winston back to victory real fast. So had Winston Churchill not stood up to what his inner core values were, and he just let Adolf Hitler come run over Britain, where do you think we would be now? That is a big deal. And then he knew that he had a relationship already with Franklin Roosevelt, and he nurtured that even more, and then they became allies, and then we were able to win the war. So it's really important, who your friends are too. So, but the law of Big Mo, I like the story about Pixar and how that all came to be, and how they started out in 1979, all this crazy stuff. I had no idea it went back that far, because you think about Toy Story and you think about the little lamp jumping on the A or whatever it is on there. And you always see Lasseter. You see his name everywhere on Toy Story, on Bug's Life, on all these different Disney cartoons, Nemo and all this. And it's really interesting just to read where this came from and how Lasseter, he was like a new guy. He was like the new man on the totem pole, and people, they didn't want to listen to what he had to say. Because of that, they're like, oh yeah, you do this for 20 years, then we'll listen to you or whatever, But then Steve Jobs bought the Pixar out, and then Disney got in on it. And so that was just really awesome. I don't know, for some reason I just didn't remember that story, but I thought that was really awesome. But momentum is like a fast moving train. And I do remember Fallon saying that a long time ago, whenever we first did this book. And that is so true. Momentum is like a magnifying glass. It makes things look bigger than they really are. And when you are in momentum, you don't worry about the small things. You don't worry about the people that are saying, well, I took my pink drink, I've been taking it for 2 weeks and I just don't see any results. Okay, well, do you see muscles right away when you go to the gym? You got to work out. You got to do some more than 2 weeks here. And when you stop going to the gym, you're not going to keep your muscles. Go to the gym, muscles. Don't go to the gym, no muscles. So, you just have to, you can't worry about those kinds of things. You have to keep going. And you work with, like I said, on our last call, you work with your horses that are running. You don't worry about these other ones that are wanting to sit around underneath the tree and hang out. So adding value to people. What did he talk about? He said, when leadership is strong and there's momentum in an organization, people are motivated and are inspired to perform at higher levels. That's so true. I don't know. This whole chapter was amazing. You have something to say right now here, honey?
No, you hit it. So there's 2 key points to momentum, and you just hit on one of them, actually, so that's a good place to interject a little bit. So there's 2 key things that have to be in place in order for you to have momentum with your teams. The first is preparation, and this is, I think, where most people, when I talk to people, especially in this business, this is where I think most people, it catches them off guard. You have to prepare your team for the road ahead. We talked about the law of navigation and how, you're navigating the ship for your team, if you will. Part of that means that you're considering the obstacles. What does the road ahead look like? What obstacles are we going to run into? We've most oftentimes already encountered those obstacles. And if we're not sharing those stories up front, especially with our new folks that are in the business, what we're doing essentially is we're leaving them unprepared. And so it's hard to have momentum when you hit an obstacle. If you don't have momentum going when you hit that obstacle is going to stop you cold in your tracks. And that's where we have attrition.
Right.
So we don't want that. So we have to prepare them ahead of time by saying, this is the road ahead. This is what you can expect. These are some of the obstacles you're going to run into. And when you do, let's talk about some actions you can take, so that already in their mind, they have a mental picture of what that obstacle looks like. And they already, it's not this insurmountable thing they're going to run into. They already have a plan on how to get around it or go through it. Because sometimes we got to go through it. That's part of growth. The other piece is what Rochelle alluded to, which is the motivation. And we do well with the motivation piece. This is a motivational team, I'm going to tell you. I've worked with a lot of teams, and this team is motivational. But, it goes back to, how do you inspire how do you inspire your team to stay in momentum? That's the key. A lot of teams fall in and out of momentum. And the teams that are successful are the ones that stay in momentum. Mm-hmm. And so we say that, well, my team's in momentum. So yes, that's exciting. Now the next question should be is, what am I going to do to keep them there? Because a team that falls in and out of momentum, it loses people every time it falls out of momentum because they get discouraged. Mm-hmm. It's easy to ride that wave of euphoria when you've got that promotion, and then the next month, 2 of your people drop off and you're going, what just happened? We got to figure out how we keep our teams in momentum. And it's not hard if you've done the first thing, which is preparation. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. And it takes, so if you get out of it, it's hard to get your momentum back. You got to work back up again. You got to go back up the hill again, get on your bike again, whatever. So you definitely, when you're in momentum, you want to keep that momentum for sure. And it takes a leader to create momentum. Followers can catch it. They can get on there with you. They can start running up the hill with you or whatever. But it takes a leader to cast that vision. And I know that Lori Welch talks about that a lot, casting that vision. But just having that vision, having that passion, having that energy about you, all of those things. And then people, you're enthusiastic about stuff. You're positive. You're training your team and duplicating all these good things down the line so that they want to stay with you. When people start talking about detox or whatever, you can let them know these are the things that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get over the hump, whatever we say, and you're going to keep going. But I liked how they talked about another story, how they talked about this teacher that was in the high school, and they said he was fighting a tidal wave of negative momentum. That does not sound like fun to me. A tidal wave? That's a big deal. But they surpassed this tidal wave of negativity, and they were doing all these math classes and the calculus exams and all of this. And they went from being a school that almost lost its complete accreditation to being like one of the top 3 schools. So I thought that was really awesome. So kind of like Fallon's video that she made the other day, it doesn't matter, is it worth it? How long does it take? All these things. It doesn't matter. You just keep going because you just don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
So 10 o'clock, did you want to say anything else about this here?
So there are some truths about momentum, I think, that help too, to kind of bring this to full circle. The first truth about momentum is that it makes leaders look better than they are. When we're in momentum, people are, what does that mean? So when leaders are successful and there's momentum happening, people tend to look past they're not paying attention to some of the things the hiccups, if you will, that the leader may have had getting there. They're just in momentum. That's what they see. So momentum makes leaders look better than they really are at the time. And so the second point kind of follows that natural progression. It also helps followers perform better than they are. And again, we come back to when you're successful and you're in momentum, people want to be a part of that team. People gravitate to those teams. There's more success stories to share. So it's easier to attract people to the team. And so that's why I say it's important to get in momentum and stay in momentum. That's where your teams are going to grow exponentially. The third point is that it's easier to steer momentum than it is to start momentum. So I love the analogy in the book. It talks about water skiing. I don't know if you've water skied before, but let me just share that I'm not good at water skiing. Stop laughing. But this is such a true statement. It is so hard to get up on those daggone skis in the water. But
there's a trick to it.
There is a trick to it. But, that's that beginning of momentum. The boat takes off. There's tension on the cord. And, you're fighting all that resistance. I mean, just think about that resistance of the water being the negativity and the naysayers and the time and the energy it takes to get your team built and going, But what happens if you stay with it and you hang on to that rope and you keep your knees in? That's the key. Eventually you're on top of the water, and suddenly it's really easy to steer and navigate, and you've got momentum working for you. That's the same point here. It's much easier to steer than to start. So every time you fall in and out of momentum, you have to restart, and it's hard. But if you stay in momentum, you just have to steer it. Mm-hmm. So the last point is that, momentum is a powerful change agent. When you're in momentum, that's a great time to start trying to change the things that you've seen on your team, because they're apt to listen. They're all in that euphoric state. And, that's where you want to start, saying, okay, we're going to have to make some subtle changes in some of the things that we're doing as a team because of the back office changeover or whatever, you name it. If you're in momentum, it's a powerful change agent and people are willing to listen to you, as opposed to if you're not in momentum and I say, hey, the back office is switching over. Any of you who were here for that fun, you know what we're talking about.
The back office switch over in 2015.
So yeah, I was just listening to her talk about that, and that was enough for me. But if your team's in momentum, it's easier for them to accept that there's change happening and push through that change to success on the other side, as opposed to if you're still trying to fight that resistance of the water, if you will. Right. So the other point I want to say about momentum is that roadblocks will either slow or stop you if you're not prepared to recognize them. So take time. If you want to keep your team on momentum, go back to that preparation piece I talked about. Identify the roadblocks or the obstacles that your team's going to face in the near term and the long term, however you want to do it. Identify it. Address it up front. These are some things you're going to experience. Identify it with your customer. If you're not telling your customer that, hey, by day 3, you're going to start to experience some signs of detox, and these are the things you're going to expect to see, then you're probably not doing your customer any service, and they're probably not going to stick around for the long haul. But if you prepare them mentally for what they're going to expect and give them an action plan to work through that when they run into it, they're much more inclined to stay the course. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you an example of that. So in Iraq, a lot of my stuff is military, 20 years, just it happens, but it's applicable, I promise. In Iraq, one of the things that they would do to slow down our convoys of vehicles that we were trying to move supplies and different things is they would put burning tires and burning cars and just about anything else you can burn in the middle of the road. And it was meant to stop our momentum as a convoy, our forward motion, to the point where we were either stalled or going so slow that they could then attack us and deliberately waylay us from getting to wherever our objective was. And in much the same way, what we learned to do was don't stop. Mm-hmm. Keep the momentum. I'm going 55 miles an hour. I'm going to keep going 55 miles an hour. And I'm going to go right through that obstacle that you've put in my way. Because I know that if I don't, I'm going to get waylaid. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it was, it'd be catastrophic if we didn't. But it's the same thing with your teams. Get the momentum going, keep the momentum going so that when the obstacle is thrown in front of you, you push right through it. Mm-hmm. That's the key there. And then, we talk about identify team member obstacles and learn with them. So sit down with your team members, sit down with your direct downlines, spend time with them. I coach several clients, and that's the piece I talk about with them too. They say, well, why aren't my teams growing? Well, more times than not, it's because we're not taking time to sit down and deliberately learn with them and identify their obstacles that they're going through and help them create action plans. And how do you do that? Well, the first thing you do is you recognize. I recognize the obstacle for what it is. I'm going to run into these obstacles. The next thing is I come up with a plan. Okay, when I hit that obstacle, this is what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to push through it. I'm going to go around it. I'm going to, reach out to somebody who's more experienced or versed in that situation, and they're going to get around it for me. Whatever the plan is, you're going to have a plan. And then the last part is the part that we have the hardest time staying the course with and helping our teammates through, and that's the act. When they run into that obstacle, are we there to act with them, to help push them through? We talk about navigation, the law of navigation. The navigator doesn't chart the path, hand it to the captain, and say, have a good trip. I'll see you when you get there. I'm going to step off. No, they stay on the ship. They stay on the plane in case they run into obstacles and they need to replot or re-navigate through different circumstances. And you're that navigator for your team. I like to put it to you like this. If you do these things, they're going to be better prepared and they're going to be able to stay in momentum when they hit that obstacle. And I put it to you like this. Think about a scary movie that you watched more than once. Okay. So the first time you watch that scary movie, every time a scary scene or a startling scene popped up, you got startled and it caught you off guard and you were like, oh my goodness. And you had a couple of moments where you were, you didn't know what to think, right? The second time you watched that movie though, what happened? You had a plan. You knew what to expect. You were prepared for it. You didn't have the same startled reaction, or maybe you did. Stop watching scary movies if you did. But maybe you did, but if you don't have that, the point is you don't have that scared, startled reaction anymore because you were prepared for it the second time around. Well, think about that with your teams. The first time through that scary movie is them walking through it with you on what might happen. That way, when they see it that second time for real, they're not startled. They're not waylaid by that. And they keep that momentum.
We don't watch scary movies, just so you know.
No.
I just want to make sure y'all knew that.
Well, we watched Toy Story, too. It had some scary parts in it. All right. So that was my big talking points. I did a lot of talking. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I like listening to you talk. I'm like, shoot, I'll just sit over here and listen to him. He's doing a great job over here. Okay. So, yeah. And another thing I was going to say is belief. I mean, just like our people that went to convention, and you have to have 100% unshakable, rock solid belief. If you have that, it's going to be really hard for people to stop you in your tracks or throw obstacles in your way, because that these products work. That this business compensation plan is amazing, all of that. So, if you don't have that, you need to get that. And you can get that by reading all these million testimonies that are out there everywhere. Got Health and Happiness and Beyond has a whole bunch of them. And you can watch Diamond documentaries. There's all kinds of things. Get in the back office and read up some of all the product information that's back there. They've got a lot of really good stuff now.
Yeah.
The back office now is totally not like what it was when I first started. So lots of good stuff in there. So get your belief. It's really important. So 10:12 right now. Shall we go ahead and branch off, or are we staying on, or what are we doing here? Let me see.
Jamie, are you guys? I think you have enough.
Yeah, we'll branch off. So we'll have it posted in BU under the link, guys. So our team can jump off. So thank you.
All right.
Thanks for sharing, Matt.
Thanks,
You're
Jamie.
welcome.
Bye.
Y'all have a good night.
So we're going to be calling on some people tonight.
Everyone who is not in Jamie's downline on down, you guys can stay over here.
Mm-hmm.
Stay on with us.
Stay on with us so we can call on you. So, okay, we got some questions.
Yeah. So
Anybody want to say anything?
I guess that was going to be my biggest question is what we talk about this all the time, and it's very important in any of these. It's easy to be a passive participant in these book studies, but our goal is to draw you out as active participants, and what that means is how are you applying what you're learning? And a lot of this, the beautiful thing about this is shared experiences. As you read through these two chapters, does anybody want to kind of offer up any insight they gained or any kind of aha moments where they said, wow, this is exactly what was going on with my team, and now this brings us into a lot better clarity?
I think this first law of victory, I hate it when I see people quit the business before they even get to the finish line. Like, why start something if your goal isn't to win? If you're not winning, why aren't you winning? Why aren't you taking your team to victory? If you're not helping people reach their goals, why not? You're never going to get anywhere in life if you quit. You need to grow through it, because the skills necessary for network marketing are life skills. Everything that we learn now is going to help us with raising our kids. It's going to help with everything. So if you're not being successful, there's a reason, and there's probably other areas in your own life that you're not being successful as well. And we like to talk about how, I think way back in the day, Sonia and Lori talked about this, but network marketing, basically we get paid to do personal growth. I mean, that's basically what this is, my whole journey and where it's taken me. I mean, I'm getting paid to grow and develop myself. So I just love that chapter, and that was my thought on that one.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, right when he started out and talked about the three different elements of the unwillingness to accept defeat, the unity. I always have been thinking about, I'm going to cast the vision for myself, but not really in a bigger way, casting that vision to the whole team. And then just those three things were really hitting home. And then the diversity of skills, it's so easy to think about, okay, I want people just like me. And because it's easy to relate, it's easy to communicate, but then not taking into account how that maybe the people that are wanting to hear about Plexus, that need Plexus, they're going to hear it better from somebody who's way more into the science element of it, or somebody who just communicates in a different way. They'll connect with them in a different way than they would connect with me. So that's what came to mind on the diversity of skills, that just as I'm growing my team and coaching these people that come to me that are different than who I am, there's a real strength in that. And I loved that. And, and then both of those things to that third one about being that, as a leader, I really have to step that up to show that to the rest of the team, because I think I keep thinking about my Plexus team and what I'm doing and what I'm doing to attract new ambassadors and to share with more people. And it hasn't been so deep as it has wide. And really exciting to see it growing deeper, to see some of the people on my team really growing their teams. And those three things made me think, okay, so I need to be a better leader and help them to take all of those and really incorporate that as we move forward. So those are a very practical application for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's really good.
That's application right there. I like that.
And we need, just like, I mean, we talked about this on the last book study that we did. We need all the parts of our body. Our eyes are not doing what our hands are doing. Our hands are not doing what our feet are doing. So we need all these different people. And that's why they talk about the 4 colors. We need reds and yellows and blues and greens. We need everybody. So yeah, that's really good.
Anybody else want to share on that one?
I really liked where it said you cannot kindle a fire in any other heart until it's burning within your own. So, oh, Rochelle. Hello.
Sorry, I don't know if that was me or what that was. I didn't touch anything. Sorry.
But I really liked that. It's so true. I was not excited about Plexus until I went to Leaders Retreat last year. But I mean, I was posting on Facebook once every other week maybe about Plexus, but I wasn't excited about it, and I didn't have any sort of anything going on with that. And after Leaders Retreat, that helped with that. And then actually listening to Fallon and getting on all the calls and stuff, that created momentum within me. And then before I knew it, my team was growing like crazy. So it really makes a difference.
It does. These team calls. Hey, Guthrie. These team calls and these book clubs are super important, and you will grow if you're on them. And you need your team. We need our teams to be on these calls with us.
Yes. That's part of that casting your vision. If your vision doesn't include drawing out, inviting, whatever you need to do to get your teams on involved in these opportunities, I will tell you, you will be hard pressed. I've worked in other organizations. You'll be hard pressed to find an organization that's willing to invest in your personal growth like this company does. And even on this team, this team does a very good job of setting up multiple opportunities for you to grow. So the real question isn't, can you grow? It's, will you grow? Because can is being answered for you every single day. Fallon on down, they're setting opportunities in motion for you to grow. So drag your teams in here, get them in here, cast that vision for them and tell them, hey, if you want to really be successful in this business, at some point your obstacle will become your personal growth. Where are you at? You're your own lid. We talk about that. And so that may be the very obstacle you need to have that conversation with. It's not if, it will stall their momentum. So, have that conversation with them and say, listen, I know you don't want to get up. You've told me you don't want to be on these calls. You don't want to be in these book clubs. You're too busy. You don't have time. It's all about trying to build your business. But listen to me. At some point in time, that's going to become the very limiting factor for your team's growth, because you're going to become literally the ceiling they're going to run into.
I try very hard to join every single thing that I have available to me. I am the queen of Power Hour. I'm always there. And I missed it today, y'all. We're evacuating for this hurricane, and I have just been running. Y'all see me, okay? It's been a crazy couple of days, but I'll try to join everything. And I always post the link. I'm always a hair bit late because I'm posting the link in my team chat. Y'all come on. Yeah. But sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I'm always trying to get them to join, and I keep telling them that is what you got to do. Yeah. I can't tell them everything that I'm learning from y'all. Yeah, I get so much from y'all. I can't possibly pass it all on.
Right.
They need to be here.
Yeah.
And, that's why I'm here.
That's right.
Preach it, Cindy. Preach it.
I love it.
I do every day.
Yeah. I
I can't believe you missed a power hour because of a hurricane. What in the world?
I know. It's crazy.
It's just an obstacle. You're going to be all right.
It's just an obstacle, but I'm here.
That's right.
You're here.
That's right.
Exactly.
And I did my IPA today, too.
Come on. Now, what excuse can anybody else offer up? I mean, come on.
Exactly.
I love it.
We're in the middle of an evacuation. You're like stuck on the highway. Reach out the window. Hey, you heard of Plexus over there?
There you go, Rochelle. There you go.
I love it.
I was at Walmart one day, and the guy was going to explain something on the bottom shelf, and he was a heavy-set man, and the minute he squatted down, he complained about his knees, and I said, oh my gosh, I can help you. Let me tell you about this stuff. He didn't buy anything, but I told him about it.
Hey, every opportunity is there. You just got to be willing to see it for what it is. It's an opportunity. We already know everybody needs products.
Yes.
We know that just about everybody, if not everybody, needs the opportunity.
Yes.
So it's just seeking out it's just knowing, hey, look, I go out looking for opportunities. I know she does. She's the queen of it. I think she talked to 3 different people today, just in random conversation. So that's awesome.
Well, they all give you a cue. If you let them talk, they give you a cue.
I love it. Yeah.
I listen, y'all. I'm learning.
That's right. Yep. You've got to let them talk. Exactly. And I love it when I say, oh, yeah, I got 7 kids. And they're like, oh, 7 kids. Oh, my gosh. Are they all yours? Yeah. No, we pick some of them up to take them to the commissary. We thought that would be fun.
Every Thursday, we just pick up kids randomly and take them with us. It's fun.
Anyways, so do we got anything else to say here? You got any more questions on the law of victory?
That's the biggest. A lot of it is just put it to action now. Mm-hmm. Everything we talk about, put it to action with your team and watch what happens to your teams. Watch the momentum pick up steam. And then, again, when they hit that obstacle, watch them plow right through it. And that should excite you. The idea of your team plowing through an obstacle, especially ones that tend to waylay other people, that should excite you. I know it does me. When I watch teams, plow through and do the things that people said couldn't be done, to me, that is the biggest source of motivation, and I feed off of that, is that excitement. I feed off of that. And then they will pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say, I had to underline and was going to talk about what Courtney did too. You cannot kindle a fire in any other heart until it's burning within yourself. And people can't look at their downlines. Bringing this back to Plexus, of course, that's why we're here. But you can't look at your downline and say, what's your problems? Why aren't they on fire? Why aren't they exploding when you're not? If you're not recruiting, they're not going to be recruiting. If you're not leading with what they talk about here, you cannot kindle a fire, and it starts with enthusiasm, energy, passion, and vision. It begins with one individual leader. So you have to set the pace for your team. And every one of these laws, I swear, they all say passion, energy, and enthusiasm. Yep. You have to be, because nobody wants to follow a leader that is not charismatic and is just dull and boring and, okay, team, get on the call. This is important. Tell them why. Why is this important? How is it changing your life? Let them see the change in you, and then they're going to want to be a part of it too. So I love the law of momentum, or the law of the Big Mo, as he calls it, because it really is something that's necessary. At the beginning, before you have momentum, everything seems hard. You feel like you're working really, really hard, and it's almost like you're spinning your wheels, but you're not really. But that's just how it is before you get momentum going. And once you get the momentum going, you don't want to lose it. I've had momentum going on my team since Ruby, and I've not lost it because I really focus on looking at teams and individual people and making sure they don't lose it. That's how you're going to get your momentum going, is by building it within each leg of your team. So this chapter is so good. And if you want to grow a fast and strong team, read it and read it and read it some more, and make some videos on it for your team. Don't tell them necessarily where you got the information, but just tell them this is important. So I love this chapter. It's probably my favorite.
And it is the leader's responsibility. It says that. And so we are all leaders. So we all need to be doing this. It says creating momentum requires someone who has vision, someone who can assemble a good team and motivates others. If the leader is looking for someone to motivate him, then the organization is in trouble. If the leader is waiting for the organization to develop momentum on its own, then the organization is in trouble. It is the leader's responsibility to initiate momentum. And then he says, if you can't make some heat, get out of the kitchen. So you have got to do these kinds of things. And so if you don't know how to do them, you can reach out to your sponsor. You can, like Fallon said, read the chapter over and over again until you get it, whatever you need to do. But we have to be doing this as leaders, and we have to be reaching out to our teams, and we have to be talking to them and letting them see our passion. Just like we let other people, you know, that we want to tell about the products or whatever, they hear the passion in our voice. Oh my gosh, this is going to help you so much with your migraines. My aunt doesn't have any more migraines. All these things. They hear the passion. You have to do the same thing with your team. Basically, you're doing the same thing with your team that you're doing with all of the people that you follow up with on the products. Mm-hmm. You're following up with your ambassadors all the time. You're following up all the time. It's no different. It's just business versus products or whatever, you know.
Well said.
All right, who are we going to call on? Who hasn't talked? Cindy's talked. Courtney's talked. Who's Lala 69? Why do we not have names in here? I need to know names. Meg has talked. Elizabeth and Lori. Is that you, Lori Lee? I'm going to unmute you.
I don't know why my name's not in there, but I'm listening to y'all, but I'm doing other stuff too, like prepping my meals and stuff, but I'm listening.
That's you, Shantae. You're Lala 69.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to write that down so I can remember that.
Now, we know Shantae's doing personal growth. We're not worried about you doing personal growth. We know you're all about that, so.
Yes.
Did you, so for those of you who don't know, Shantae jumped on board this, weeks ago? How long ago did she jump on this? A couple weeks ago, right? Yeah, she jumped in this a couple weeks ago. She's caught a vision, and she's got the momentum going, and she wants to keep it going. So she jumped in the book club here. She jumped in the book. She's like, look, I haven't read the first few chapters, but I'll jump in and grow right where I'm at. Powerful statement.
Yeah.
Powerful statement. So we're glad to have you in here, Shantae.
Brad's asleep beside me. Okay. That's all right. So does anybody else have anything to say, or do we have any more questions?
Nope. That's your challenge for the week, is to sit down with yourself first and foremost and ask yourself, what are the roadblocks you're going to run into? Mm-hmm. You know, start writing them down. Brainstorm. Ask your upline, you know, what are the roadblocks I'm going to run into that I haven't yet that are going to create, a stall to my momentum and make me vulnerable to being waylaid from my goal, and write them down and create a plan for each of those obstacles. And then once you've done that, you take that and share it with your teams and help them develop their own lists, and then post those things. This is trust me, this is a great tool to help your team stay in momentum. Is if they already know what to expect and what the plan is when they run into it, they're going to be successful.
Yeah. I like the question on page 206, number 1. It says, momentum begins inside the leader and spreads from there. Have you taken responsibility for the momentum in the area of which you are the leader? Are you passionate? Do you display enthusiasm at all times? Do you work to motivate others even when you don't feel like it? I mean, honestly, how many times have Fallon and I both said there are times where we got all these kids, we're dealing with whatever else. You may not feel like something right away, but as soon as you get on that call, or as soon as you get on this book club, or whatever it is that you're doing, you automatically feel motivated. Let me tell you something. I did not feel like doing a book club tonight, okay? My hair is a wreck. You see why it's up in a ponytail back here. And I mean, I threw on some earrings and was like, all right, let's do this. It's like, I didn't really feel like getting on right away. I have a lot going on right now, and these kids need to get homeschooled properly, and we got a hurricane and appointments up the wazoo and everything else, but you do it anyways. And it is so inspiring to listen to all of you guys on here and to be knowing that we're doing this all together.
Yeah.
And so now I'm pumped, and now I'm like, I don't want to get off the call. So
I love that, Emily, you're brand new and you're on here. It's so important that everybody gets on these book clubs. And I'm actually going to miss next week because I will be on a plane to Maui, hopefully. But getting people started right away and seeing silvers and people who aren't even silver on here learning to be a leader, that's getting ahead. To keep momentum going and to not hit roadblocks is to do the personal growth now before you even feel like you need it, before you get stuck and sit there wondering why you're stuck in your business. And that's the secret, is to do so much personal growth now that when these things arise in your team, you're going to know how to handle it. So Brittany Howard and I have been talking about, how do you not get stuck, and how do we as leaders have basically, it seems all the answers, like we know what to say, and it's from personal growth and just absorbing everything we can from successful people. And the people who are on the book clubs, they just have those answers ready for people. And you can just tell the ones who've been doing personal growth, and they're the ones that are ranking up. So good job to all of you who are on here and are participating.
Yep.
Yes. Welcome, Emily. I didn't see the chat. Now I'm looking at Meg Riggs. Your bangs, they look cute. Whatever. That's so true, though, Fallon. Love that. I think we might as well end on that because that was just really good.
Anybody else want to add anything else? All right.
All right. We're going to wave. Say goodbye.
Thank y'all.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.